Hello, how are you today? Do you want to dive into a book that might just surprise you, whether it becomes your next favorite or one you might skip? Let's find out what readers are saying about it.
Tina Rafi lives in fandoms who has 35 likes says. 5 silver stars with golden sparks think I should consider it golden stars top 5 most likely the best of 2025 wow so many things happened started from the beginning I didn't see that coming the horror. My favorite moments that I kept track of new characters Aaron. Angelica the new side of this old character. That I didn't think was important in book 1 for a while. I'd even forgotten his look the new ship I am all for it though it was very small moments. The chemistry building. I hope we have more about them more POV around them or just having their POVs chapters 6-17 were. Fire chapters 14-15 were wild last chapters. A wild roller coaster on fire it broke my heart. I cried. I loved it. I mean I expected something like that would happen. Something bad. But this was the worst possible way yeah. It's Cassie Clare after all. Not only tormenting characters us in the romance side of the story. But in the main plot as well. My dark side enjoys it. I love the thrills. The epilogue made me whoop it was one of the anticipations I wanted for Longbook. One seemed slower because introducing us to the world the characters the routine took time. But I love that too. It showed the big potential the series has. This book showed even more it was all action tender romance mystery. Love the characters well. Except Gramont. An ass but every book needs these kind of characters. Right I should reread them before book 3 coming out. I forgot some details from book 1 I remembered by the mention here. But I want to remember the whole scene how it ended that way you can read my more coherent review. About the characters' world building not fangirling screams in book 1 Swordcatcher plot 5 pace. Medium slow. But didn't bother me. I was devouring every chapter enjoying reading the story. Characters 5 likability writing style. 5 world building 5 concept 5 pre-read wait have a data blurb why I didn't notice it. Before yes I thought now I've read book 1 I should wait an unknown amount of years book 2 first most anticipated book of 2025 finger crossing that the date won't change I even love the temporary cover. Do you think the final cover be purple or blue too I have a feeling. Updated July 20th told you. It's gonna be blue. Athena of Valaris who has 11 likes says. Cassandra Clare has created the perfect political and personal fantasy. Reading all of her books but this series especially is like stepping through a portal into another world that you can't help but get lost in. I adore the complexity of the story and all the historical details woven together with fantasy. There's so much to analyze and obsess over. And yet the story feels completely natural. The characters are incredibly real and complicated unknowable and yet understandable. I honestly don't have enough words to convince you to read this book. So I can only tell you that you should. Even if you don't like Shadowhunters. This series has so much to offer. If you like complex politics, historical fantasy, fantastic characters, and earth-shattering romance, then this is the perfect book for you. Carlene who has 55 likes says. You shall leave everything you love most this is the arrow that the bow of exile shoots first you are to know the bitter taste of others' bread. How salty it is. And know how hard a path it is for one who goes ascending and descending others' stairs. Dante. Paradiso 6 Court Intrigue Erased Magic Hidden Identity Forbidden Romance Religion and Politics second book of a fantasy series. Possibly 45 books total character-driven plot with multi-layered minor characters pacing slow start. Strong finish romantic subplot with some spice scenes and yearning multiple character narration. With third-person POV historical fantasy kingdom intricate. Immersive world building simple magic system there's a dark conspiracy within the royal court of Castellane. Kell. now deeply involved with the Ragpicker King's underworld, seeks to expose the culprits behind a recent massacre at the palace. As his lies and secrets continue to mount up, he starts to crumble as new players are introduced into the game. Prince Connor, traumatized by recent events, grapples with his responsibility to his kingdom. Struggling with the political turmoil around him, he seeks assistance from Lynn. Connor and Lynn must decide where their loyalties lie as they grow closer to each other, and a secret that will change everything. Lynn Castor has falsely claimed to be the goddess reborn. She must prove her ability to save her people. But when the leader of the Ashkar returns, she must pass a set of trials or risk losing everything. That ending, are you kidding? I am screaming and throwing up. Those last 30 pages were indeed batshit crazy. How am I supposed to move on with my life now? This was so much better than the first book. And the next one will only be better. Holy shit, I am in awe. Wow. Kel knew that Connor feared the fall. The tumble into the vast empty abyss of despair. Anger was better than despair, even anger against someone you loved. Anger was fire. And despair was darkness. And Connor had for years been afraid of the dark. Cassandra knows how to write a strong sequel. And this was no exception. As much as I loved the first book, this was even better. Dare I say 6 stars. It seamlessly picks up from where the story left off, whilst taking the plot and characters to new and amazing directions. We get to explore this new world that Cassandra created and dive into new characters. And boy, do I love these new players. Namely Erin Benjuda, the swoon-worthy Exilarch, and Princess Elsabet, a sinister female villain. I remain more invested in Lynn's storyline compared to Kel's. Although I did enjoy the scenes with Team Ragpicker Marin, GN, and Jared the Golden and comedic trio. Marin is adorable and must be protected at all costs. GN is such a badass queen. And Jared's cute little crush on Marin. The one relationship I don't completely understand is Kel and Antonetta. There hasn't been enough development between them for me to feel invested. I almost wish he didn't have a love interest at this point. Now, my favorite part of this book was the yearning and tension between Lynn and Connor. Damn, it was so painful in the best way possible. It nearly broke me. I am completely in love with these two. And I need them to be together right now. Cassie, why oh why do you do this to me? And the direction we are going in the next book makes me think there will be little interaction between them. Sigh. I asked you because when I am not with you, Lynn Castor, I feel as if some part of me has been torn away. I feel as if I am bleeding. Insensible with the pain of a wound no one can see save myself. When you are with me, it is the only time I feel whole. If you liked Swordcatcher, then you will absolutely devour this sequel. It is an emotionally charged, well-written continuation of the first novel with expansive political intrigue, characters that will rip your heart out, and an ending that will leave you gasping. Are you ready? I want a different life than the one I have. Sour Lemons, who has 13 likes, says 4.75 rounded to 5. What an absolutely incredible sequel. I have been anticipating this book since Swordcatcher was released, and it did not disappoint one bit. The plot, characters, and their relationships just kept me so invested, and I was unable to put down the book even though I was in the midst of studying for 2 exams for grad school. Thanks for that, Cassie XD. I think I did alright, though lol. In terms of the 0.25 deduction, my only point of contention, which I believe many other people might also have, is the lack of a Connor POV or some sort of transitional chapters between the 2 books that show more of Connor's growth. I also wanted a little explanation for some loose threads in Swordcatcher that I might have looked too closely into, and also for some people's motivations. Though this might actually be addressed quite well in the next book. Now that all the cards have been laid out, now, I will delve into spoilers and how I feel about each character and the theories I have for the bone. Conjurer's an incredibly badass name, by the way, sorry in advance. This is a huge review with all of my thoughts, so feel free to skim if you'd like. Just wanna get all my feelings out there. Kel, my sweet little boy. Kel is such a kind, genuine person, and you can clearly see how it comes out throughout this book. With how he always gave people the benefit of the doubt, from Antonetta to Jolivet to Joss, and how he has to learn from that. But he's also incredibly badass and silly, and was a fun treat to read in this book. I remember being a little bored with Kel's antics in the first book and preferring Lynn's sections. But Kel and the Ragpicker King gang were super fun to read about, whether they were on a secret mission or just chilling in a noodle shop. I will get to the Ragpicker King gang in a bit, but Kel had such great banter and chemistry with them, and it really gave me 6 of Crows vibes. OBV. Marin is Wylan and Jared is Jesper XD. He was also down bad drooling over Antonetta in a lot of the scenes, which I found quite amusing, but after I saw this fan art of them at the masquerade, I totally understand why I was on the edge of my seat for a lot of the action sequences. And I found myself piecing the mystery together just as Kel did, though I had a previous hunch about Antonetta due to a theory I read online, and hated the awful circumstance of timing in classic Cassie fashion at the end with the council meeting. Of course, Kel simply had to tell Connor everything after the council meeting and not before. The only thing that had me guessing that Seven was Joss was the one detail stated about Seven having dark hair. I was suspicious of Joss, but nowhere near to fully consider him a traitor. It really hurts for them, since they've all been friends since childhood, and Joss is immediately ready to trample Kel to get a crumb of power for himself. Ugh. Disgusting. Fuck Joss. You don't deserve Seven as a nickname. Own it, bitch. You are a traitor also. The fact that Jolivet also threw Kel under the bus was such a blow too. Everyone is just looking out for their own skin and don't give a shit about anyone else. So it was so infuriating what Connor had to do, even though he didn't want to do it. However, I absolutely knew that Connor would not leave Kel to die and would find some way to get him to safety. I am so glad he gave Kel the amulet, though Connor likely needs it more now that he's all alone. But I am super excited to see Kel, the Ragpicker King gang, and Antonetta all working together. And speaking of Antonetta, what an incredible twist. I did not want to believe Antonetta could actually be Prosper Beck, but rather knew him and was the sponsor on the hill that people were suspecting, which she essentially was. There were some confusing and rather odd things Antonetta did throughout Swordcatcher in this book that made me go huh at the moment, and kind of just dismiss due to her whole persona being a sort of airhead, like her randomly stating that Kel is good in bed lol when she was near him at the Shining Gallery as Connor, and also her saying to Angelica at the banquet that she used to actually pursue Connor but is glad Angelica is happy. While I never fully believed she was stupid, I do remember dismissing some of the odder things she said as just her being silly and mysterious. So I love that Cassie used Antonetta's personality to not only make the characters in the story underestimate her, but also the audience. Her motivations as Prosper Beck make sense, which I suspect were to blackmail Connor into a marriage with her using the dowry money so she could keep the Silk Charter, since Connor cannot hold it being king. However, I would like to know how she feels about kind of starting this entire mess with Sarth, since she did force Connor to get married in secret, even though it wasn't with her, leading Sarth to be insulted. Then the Shining Gallery stuff and blah blah blah. However, you can argue that the whole Malgassi conspiracy plot would have happened whether Prosper Beck existed or not, because Elsabet was promised to Connor. So it might actually be better that Antonetta intervened so Connor would not have to be married to That bitch. Antonetta seems to be a very morally complex and deep person. She's been born in material privilege, but unlike Lynn, who is openly able to defy those stereotypes, Antonetta is suffocated and must do so quietly because of her societal status. Lynn is just a random girl, while Antonetta is the daughter of the head of the Silk Charter. So clearly Antonetta has a mold to fill that she does not want to. I can't believe she was willing to put herself through the first night ceremony in order to protect her identity as Prosper Beck. But it goes to show how dedicated she is to her one form of freedom. Finally, I think she and Kel do have a sweet relationship, and I hope to see them develop and get to know each other more as their actual personalities. Because Bectonetta, I came up with that, by the way, in the end of the book with her pants and alcohol was making me feel things XD. I still wonder why she asked him to steal her locket. Was it to make him confused about Antonetta and not connect her to Beck also? Their sex scene was pretty hot, and it reminded me of Clockwork Princess with Tessa asking Will to make love to her before she dies, haha. Kel is a giver, which I am very happy to know. An NSFW warning. I was expecting him to munch and he didn't, so he better do so in the next book. I am watching you, Cassie. The Ragpicker King gang, aka Andrean, GN, Marin, and Jared. These guys were a hoot. I had so much fun reading scenes with them. GN especially is so dry and funny. Her humor reminds me of Susie from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, who is also a lesbian icon and has a sad romantic past. Jared and Marin were so sweet, and Def gave me Wesper vibes. Though Jared is more of a combo of Matthias and Jesper to me, since he is more serious and was kind of not on our side last book, lol. Andrean did not show up as much as I thought he would, considering he is the character the book is named after. And I did wish that he came more frequently. To be honest, I feel like we saw more of him in book 1 than book 2. But my memory might just be off. I also predicted that Andrean would be Asher since the last book, since he seemed to be so interested in magic and already knew so much about the Ashkar. So that surprise did not get me. Cassie said he has planned to have a love interest, and I have to wonder if it might be Aaron. They did seem to have a super close friendship, but perhaps those feelings were more than platonic. I hope we learn more about GN by maybe seeing some of the people she killed or family members of her lover, and also about Jared and how he owes Antonetta Beck. It's gonna be super exciting seeing Beck and the Ragpicker King team up to take down Malgassi from the city, while Connor is fighting on the hill and Lynn is fighting across the continent. And speaking of Lynn, my girl, my queen, my goddess reborn, I adore Lynn so much. She can be stubborn and unrelenting, but she is absolutely someone who strives to be the best in everything and cares so much about her work. In my Sword Catcher review, I related to Lynn as a woman in STEM, and I couldn't agree with that comparison more in this book. She has such a inner strength and strong moral compass in her. And while she feels terrible for lying about being the goddess, she undeniably has a part of that ancient magic in her, which Aaron himself recognized at the end. It infuriated me that she was exiled in the end of the book. But it actually makes sense in terms of religious history and precedent. I mean, Jesus was crucified, lol. So people aren't necessarily welcoming to people who claim to be a higher power or have an otherworldly connection to one. She and Aaron going on this trip to Aram to connect the soul stone with her person is going to be very interesting. I wonder if they end up forming some sort of connection which will make a certain other prince quite jealous, which I think was a wasted opportunity in this book. And now about Connor. Their relationship had me absolutely squealing in this book. From that scene where he called her goddess in Antonetta's engagement party while she wore that sexy dress, haha, to when she walked in on him dressing and he pretended to be cool and nonchalant. The cute florticulture bit. The hand holding with the burn on his arm. Him calling her sweetheart. The kiss in Faustin's room. The folly, the follyyyyyyyyy, damn Lynn. Losing your virginity outside in the middle of a rainstorm against a pillar is crazy, but I support women's rights and wrongs, not that it was wrong in any way, lol. I did not expect Connor and Lynn to go all the way. But I guess emotions got the better of them in that scene and they just gave in. Their relationship kind of stands at a place where they both know and acknowledge their feelings of each other. But they literally cannot do anything to be together. I was initially shocked and upset with him trying to offer her to be his mistress. But Kel's explanation did make sense with him trying to have any part of her that he could. Later, I was upset with how he was mad with her in the end of the book when she tried to convince him to let Kel go. But I now understand how he was feeling with being lied to and also his strategy of pushing Lynn away so she could not be in danger. I want to see them live a happily ever after and have a bunch of adorable silver-eyed babies. And another NSFW warning. I am also expecting some decent munching or at least some body worship for the goddess Lynn in there. Next sex scene. Connor didn't even get to see her naked or call her my goddess during sex, which is such a missed opportunity, SMH. So I hope you're taking notes for the next book, Cassie XD. I definitely do think Connor might be Suleiman reincarnated from her dreams and she is the goddess reborn. And instead of betraying her, the sorcerer King Suleiman fights beside her. I hope Lynn's weird visions are explained more too, because it is not fully addressed in this book. Connor, this poor, tortured boy needs a damn break, lol. You could see the effects ruling Castellane had on Connor for the past few months and also how he is trying to secretly deal with his feelings for Lynn. All from Kel's perspective. It has taken an emotional toll on him and he feels like he is being tortured by having to marry Angelica and not be with Lynn. He even said he would abdicate the throne if he could because he doesn't want the life he has and would rather be with Lynn. But he knows he cannot because the entire country's lives are at stake with his marriage alliances. I wonder if this is foreshadowing for a possible ending, where Lynn is the queen of the Ashkar and she marries Connor, who abdicates the throne to Kel Idkim. Just making shit up at this point. LMAO, Connor and Kel's relationship is also a wonderful highlight. And so nice to read about. We had an adorable parabatai. Is that you reference in the book? And these two are truly this world's version of parabatai. It sucks that they couldn't be open with each other on everything. While Connor had a point to keep things secret, like his feelings for Lynn, Kel did arguably keep a lot of things from Connor which he should have known. I feel the moment Artel Gramont died and they found out that Malgassi was behind the whole conspiracy, he should have immediately went to Connor. And even though I agree that all the secrets were for Connor's good, I can also see why Connor himself is angry at Kel for lying to him. Since he is the prince and he wants to be fully aware of everything around him, and Kel is Connor's blind spot, so he could be easily exploited there. Same with him being angry at Lynn. It's the two people he trusted and loved most in the world going behind his back to, yes, help him. But under mountains of lies and pretense. Lynn and Kel pretended to barely know each other in front of Connor, but they met frequently at the Ragpicker King's house. I can see how he feels somewhat betrayed. But he is also a good enough person to know that Kel was not lying and set him free with a push-off of a cliff. XD. I am incredibly excited and looking forward to seeing him practice his phoenix powers with his dad and develop them into a weapon. And I was also wondering if maybe those powers were already starting to show. Perhaps those burn marks on his arm were not from his father, but himself, just a theory. Angelica. I really enjoyed Angelica and her personality when she first came onto the page. She seemed similar to Antonetta in a way. where people were intimidated by her appearance and therefore underestimated her personality. Her brother was a funny comedic relief character. And so was Sade, her cute big getaway elephant. And that was the part that made me annoyed the getaway. When I found out that Laurent was her lover that wanted to whisk her away and not a scorned ex. I shipped them too. I thought it was like one of the story spinner's tales that Lynn talks about, the princess falling in love with the rogue pirate. But I also appreciated that Angelica said she would wait a year for the engagement to make sure Connor's business is in order, which turned out not to happen. While I understood her reason for wanting to leave because Malgassi would kill her, I was annoyed and upset at her for flip-flopping and leaving Connor to himself. Yes, a dead Kutani princess would be worse than a fiancé that fled with her lover in the night. But Connor is still all alone without any help. Also, this is unrelated, but I was wondering if the Beck that Laurent talked to on his ship was the stand-in Anna sends to meetings to be Beck. Especially since the person is described as a him, and also Laurent does not seem to know that Anna is Beck either way. I am annoyed that Angelica dipped right at the end when Kel needed her there. If I am correct, Lynn and Aaron will be going on Laurent's ship, the Black Rose, to Jakal, so they possibly might meet up with them and more information can be exchanged. I hope Angelica comes back and helps Castellane when the inevitable war with Malgassi and Sarth happen. We could use their fleet lol. That is all I have for specific characters and their plotline stories. I will likely add more above if there is something I end up remembering. Thank you for your time, and I cannot believe I have to wait 2 more years again at least for the next book update. Laurent Aiden Theory. Laurent ID like to thank Grace Carstairs on Tumblr for this very well put together theory about Laurent Aiden. I just wanted to add it to my review to perhaps spark some discussion on here. The theory basically states that Laurent Aiden is Saw's Kel's friend from the orphanage as a young boy. I'd say the evidence quite compelling when all put together. For one, Laurent Aiden and Saw's are both described by Kel and Angelica separately to have blue eyes and fair hair. Kel also never sees him up close or without a mask, so it is understandable he wouldn't automatically recognize him. Plus it's been over 12 years, so he's definitely changed physically. Whenever Kel hears about Laurent Aiden, he also thinks about his childhood friend Saw's wanting to be pirates with him, saying on PGS 136,137, everyone knew Aiden had only made a name for himself in the past 5 years or so. But his exploits were already legendary in the city. Kel could recall being a boy at the orphelinat, where he had dreamed of being a pirate with his friend Saw's, thieving from the rich to give to himself. Laurent also mentions in his POV that Castellani is the language of his birth, so he likes hearing it when he can. The most compelling details are when Kel is with Angelica when she is about to run away and hears Laurent's voice out the window and recognizes his voice. PG 479. Something about his voice was oddly familiar. Possibly he had heard him speak at the solstice ball, but he certainly never talked to him or went near him at the ball. So this is not the case. How else would he find his voice oddly familiar? Finally, Laurent even responds to Angelica telling him to wait by asking Kel's up there, tell him to get the grey hell out of Maravant. 2. There's enough room on Sade. PG 479. First of all, how does Laurent know Kel so well enough to offer him to run away with them? How does he even know Kel's name in the first place? I am sure it's possible Angelica mentioned something about Kel, but in the convo in Angelica's POV he clearly showed he doesn't care about Connor or the entire monarchy. So why would he care about Kel Anjaman? Unless there was also one final thing that Grace Carstairs didn't mention in their theory, but as a quote I find super compelling and kind of seals the coffin on this theory that sounds very interesting from Laurent's mouth but fits perfectly with Saw's On page 400, Laurent says to Angelica while they are dancing, "Suddenly you care about Castellane. Do you truly think it's such a wonderful place? Imagine growing up an orphan here, looking up at the palace, knowing you would never have any of the riches and luxuries enjoyed there, that your only task was to starve and to die. That seems like a very specific hypothetical. Aiden, or should I say CAS anyways. Thank you for my ramblings and all the credits to Grace Carstairs for being so attentive while reading to catch these clues." Sotiria Lazaridou, who has 16 likes, says, "The Ragpicker King offers a rich and immersive reading experience, blending fantasy with elements of intrigue and adventure. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because, while the book is undoubtedly engaging and full of vibrant world-building, there are a few minor moments where the pacing falters slightly. The story takes place in a beautifully crafted world with unique characters who feel real, flawed and incredibly dynamic. The protagonist stands out, balancing moments of vulnerability with strength in ways that keep the reader invested. The plot weaves together layers of mystery, politics and personal growth, keeping you hooked through twists and turns. The world-building, especially the social structures and the underlying tensions between different factions, is one of the strongest points of the novel. The interactions between the different characters and groups feel real and are executed with a keen sense of political maneuvering and emotional depth. That being said, I believe that some subplots seem to linger a bit too long, and there are moments when the pace slows down in order to develop secondary characters. The central conflict is driven by personal stakes and a deeper, more complex agenda that will keep readers intrigued. But at times, the twists may feel a bit too intricate,